Best available podcast. This is somehow episode 10. Now, we did 2 episodes in 1 week prior to the start of the NFL season. So it's only been 9 weeks, but still 9 weeks of doing this podcast. We started on August. I guess we technically started on August 16th to upload the next day. And now it is almost 2 months later, and we're still chugging along. I'm Ryan, and the other person you will hear, as always, is Matt. We have some exciting news about our upcoming guest, and that is that he is still ghosting us. We still can't figure out a time and a day that works. So stay tuned. It's gonna happen. Just have some patience with us as we're having patience with the upcoming guests. But Matt, it's a pretty prototypical October fall Monday. It seems like this happens every year. Some big storm, not really a storm, but just some cold front comes through, drops a lot of rain, and then on a Monday it's just really cloudy. You don't want to get out of bed. It's just one of those days. So, as I always start when we do these podcasts, how are you doing on this fine October 12th?
Well, these are the fall staples for living in New Jersey. You get the 50 degrees, the 15-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and the wet, damp leaves that seem to clog everything up on the streets. Remember, for all the new drivers out there, those are the most slick road conditions is when you got wet leaves. That tip courtesy of John DeLuca, my father. But doing all right, just hanging in there, waiting for the Patriots to get healthy to get back out there on the football field. Getting a flu shot today, Ryan. That's why we got to be quick on our feet on this podcast. If you're listening, this is my get on my soapbox segment for the week. Get a flu shot. It takes 2 seconds. It doesn't hurt. If you're one of those people that's afraid of needles, you could just go to your parents and be like, "Hey, I was really brave and I got my flu shot. Maybe you could get some like ice cream out of it." So it's like a win-win for everybody. So get your flu shot, kids and adults, especially adults. But that's my soapbox segment for the week.
Well, if you're afraid of needles, I know this year at some locations they have an alternative to that, which is a nasal spray. So if you really,
Oh,
really don't want the needle, it's really not bad. The thing I see the most, I think, is people go there and they don't even realize that they already when like they put the needle into your arm. People dip, they don't even realize it. So just as Matt said, it takes just a couple seconds. There's so many places you can go to get one. So just do your part and help everybody else out.
we'll
But
see. For a lot of people, my arms are like toothpicks. So a lot of the times I've been deathly afraid of needles. I haven't gotten a flu shot in a long time. So for all those people that are like me, takes 2 minutes. I hate needles, but I'm getting it to help out everybody else. So it'll be fun. I'm going to my actual doctor's office today because I trust him more than a Rite Aid, but that's just me.
and listen, I understand that maybe you might feel a little out of it after you get it. Your arm might hurt a little
What do you
bit,
mean a
but
little out of it? It's
just
just
understand that that's going to be a hell of a lot better than what the
being on a
alternative would
ventilator.
be.
Yeah.
So power through it. I
Why
trust
would you
all of
be?
you.
Why would you be a little out of it though? You just get it, and your arm's a little sore for a day, and then
Just some people they say that they just feel a little tired the next day. A little,
I feel tired every day, so it's not going to be much
that's
different. Yeah.
that's fair. Okay, so now we have some sports to talk about. By the way, rest in peace to Joe Morgan. He unfortunately passed away today. And for people, I'd say older than me and Matt, and then also kind of in our age group, we kind of grew up with him and John Miller calling Sunday night baseball games. That's how we were kind of introduced to him. So it's definitely sad to hear that news. So hope that his family is sending thoughts out to them. But we'll talk a little bit. We will talk about baseball in a little bit, but we should talk about some football. We're just going to get a few games out of the way quickly, and then we can get into the actual stuff that we want to talk about. The Jets lost again. They lost 30-10 to the Cardinals. Cardinals, after a 2-game losing streak, got back to their winning ways. Kyler Murray had a good day. The Washington football team fell again, so they have now lost 4 straight games after defeating the Eagles in week 1. The Rams won also coincidentally 30-10 on the road. Baltimore completely throttled Cincinnati. The offense for Cincinnati could not get really anything going. They ended up losing 27-3. The Ravens defense stifled them. And I would know that they stifled them because I went up against them in fantasy and they scored 33 points. So it was a bad week for me. And then Houston, in their first game in the post Bill O'Brien era under Romeo Crennel, picked up their first win of the season, 30-14 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think I saw a stat that Crennel was the oldest head coach to win a game at 70. I think he's 73 years old. So good for him. I personally remember Crennel from his days when he was the head coach of the Browns. That was my first introduction to him, but I'm glad to see that he's still kicking around. I'm glad that he was able to get a win there for that team that definitely needed a win. But there were some other games that we wanted to devote some more time to, so we just wanted to get those out of the way. And we'll start down in Atlanta, where the unthinkable has finally happened. Dan Quinn is gone. Their GM Dimitrov is gone. It seems like they are finally cleaning house after a 23-16 loss to the Carolina Panthers, dropped them to 0-5 on the season. This is something that me and Matt have been talking about for a while that we think needed to happen, that Dan Quinn needed to go. I'm surprised that Arthur Blank took it a step further and fired the GM. I didn't think that was going to happen, but I still think that was a good decision too. I do want to touch on the Panthers after this because I think there's some encouraging signs from that organization, but the bigger story obviously is Atlanta. Clearly they've never been able to recover from that blown lead in the Super Bowl. And I know they made the playoffs the following year, but they just haven't been the same since. And you can see it on the field and off the field. This was a long time coming, Matt. I'm happy that they didn't wait any longer. Like a certain team in New York is waiting to fire and clean house, but I'm interested to see where Atlanta goes from here. I don't know if they named an interim coach yet. I still think there's other guys they need to fire in that organization to really just start over fresh. But I think it was a good first step for that organization, realizing that there was an issue. So at least they addressed part of it.
Yeah, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think Dimitrov went because of this past offseason and seeing a lot of the pieces that went elsewhere and not being able to kind of replenish what was the main calling card for a lot of people last year and criticizing this team, which was the defense. Carolina looked really good. And that's saying a lot because this is a team that a lot of us, including me, thought was going to go 2-14. So to lose at home and drop to 0-5 to a team that was projected to lose 14 games, I think was the last straw. Todd Gurley looked great. I would know because he's on my fantasy team. The Falcons' offense didn't even look that spectacular through multiple parts of the game as well. I agree, Ryan. I think it's time to just scrap it all. You're wasting the best. I said this last week and probably the week before. You're wasting the best quarterback in your franchise history. His prime years are gone. You're wasting your best receiver in franchise history. His prime years are gone, that being Julio Jones. Now you got an injury-prone running back past their prime receivers. You have Calvin Ridley, who's going to be really good, but I mean, this golden window of an opportunity is kind of in the rearview mirror. I think they're going to go with Raheem Morris as their interim guy, who was there, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. It's sad to see because this was a team that should have blown the Patriots out of the water in the Super Bowl, and they were for a good majority of the game. But yeah, I just think it's a wasted window, Ryan. I mean, they wasted a prime opportunity to compete for Super Bowls as a franchise that really never did up until Dimitrov came in 2008. They kind of came relevant, especially with the addition of Matt Ryan and then eventually Julio Jones. But it's tough to see if you're a Falcons fan because you don't really know when you're going to be good again. And no disrespect to Roddy White, but Julio Jones, best receiver probably in your franchise history. Matt Ryan, best quarterback in your franchise history, and just wasting away. Not a lot of playoff appearances, not a lot of playoff wins, no Super Bowl to show for it, and a lot of it's Dan Quinn's fault in recent years. So if I'm a Falcons fan, I'm probably happy that this finally happened. But at the same time, now you're wasting the rest of the season. You're 0-5. You're going to have an interim head coach. You're going to start looking for other guys. And I think if you're looking at candidates from last year, Ryan, imagine putting Kevin Stefanski in this offense. They'd be one of the best teams in the NFL. So I don't know. They got a lot of problems, but I think the window to hire a guy was probably last year.
I think you brought up a good point about how the fan base doesn't really know when they'll be good again, because you take a look at their roster, the way it's constructed currently. I'm not going to say there's not talent here, because there is, but there's not really a lot of young talent, dependable talent, especially on the defensive end. It, it's a shame. I mean, this team seemed like they were poised to be a contender for a while, but now you look at Matt Ryan, he's still doing good, but he's 35 years old. You don't know how long you can trust Todd Gurley. The moves you've made on the offensive line, they haven't fully worked out, and as I said, the defense is just a mess. I don't know when this team is going to be good again. I mean, they have some pieces there, obviously, more so on the offensive side, but I don't know, man. Is this a multi-year thing? Is it going to take a few years for this team to get back to the playoffs, especially in their division? Or is this something that if they bring somehow the right coach in, they can kind of do something kind of quick and maybe return to relevance sooner than people think?
No, I mean, you're in the wrong division to do a quick turnaround because Carolina seems to be well on their way a little bit faster on their rebuild than a lot of people think. I'm not jumping the gun there, but I mean, they're 3-2 and they look pretty good. And then you obviously have Tom Brady and Drew Brees in your division for whatever that's worth at their stage of their career. So I think if you're Atlanta, you just have to punt and then wait out Brees and Brady, to be honest, because what's that going to be like 3 to 4 years? You can do a semi rebuild in 3 to 4 years. I don't really know if it's worth it to kind of go all in now with this older core, because then there's going to be three teams that are going to be trying to fix big holes in 5 years, being the two teams with those quarterbacks, and then also Atlanta. Because Matt Ryan's not too far away. Obviously, he's a little bit younger than Brees and Brady, but he's he's only going to be he's not of that caliber in terms of being able to be effective for that time frame. So I think you just kind of have to punt and get some, especially for Julio Jones, who seems to be getting hurt more often than he had earlier on in his career, to be able to get some picks. We talked about it in our group chat yesterday with another team in New York, Ryan, to take some of these bigger pieces, trade them for draft picks, and accelerate a rebuild. But I think that's ultimately up to the decision of the next guy you bring in. So, but again, I think they missed that opportunity last year. I think there's a lot of good candidates out there that they kind of whiffed on. And you could even say the year before, too. So I don't really know who's going to be available, but there's a lot of names that would have fit perfectly with this team.
I know a lot of people, and not just Falcons fans, any team that needs a head coach is going to bang the table for Bieniemy, and I think that would be a good. I think they need an offensive guy in there.
And he's probably the only candidate that you can realistically think of that's going to be at the top of the market. And I don't know if he would go to Atlanta, especially when there's going to be probably some other openings that might be a little more appetizing.
I want to put this name out there. I think Graham Harrell is a name to watch. I really like what he's done at the college level. And if they want a young, innovative guy, he's what I wanted the Eagles to look at to hire as an offensive coordinator, but there's reasons they didn't go that route. I think he's a name to watch, not just for the Falcons, although I think he would fit well there. What do you do with Matt Ryan? The way his contract is constructed, trading him is going to be a little difficult because you actually go against the cap. They'd have a negative 3.5 million in cap savings if they traded him prior to June 1st of next season. You still have him on the books for at least one more season. He has a potential out after 2021, and you could have him for up to his age 38 season in 2023. Do you just ride with him and just hope that maybe he can drag you to 9 wins and a playoff berth, or do you maybe try to see if anyone's interested?
I would try and see if someone's interested. You look top down. I think it's kind of rare that you see a quarterback trade, Ryan. Rare you see trades at all in the NFL of bigger name players. there's definitely teams out there that are kind of hanging out there right on the edge and might need that quarterback push, or even some teams like the Jets that might just need a new quarterback. I don't know if a trade's the best way to do it. I don't know what you're going to get out of Matt Ryan. I also think if their record continues to go the way it does, you're going to be in the conversation for what seems to be a very competitive and good quarterback class this year. I don't really know if using your top, I'm going to say top 5 draft pick because it's what it's trending towards. I don't know if using a top 5 pick on a quarterback is the most responsible thing to do with the way this roster is, but that's why I said they're just in. If you're a Falcons fan, you don't know what you're gonna do. Like they're kind of just stuck in this weird neutral headspace to where you can be good with a couple moves or you could be bad with a couple moves, and it's this weird collection of players on this team and a lot of holes on the defense, and I think that's what has to be addressed. But then that leaves you with an older quarterback, and you're gonna have to fix that problem. So it's just, I think they held on to Quinn a little too long. And yeah, it's weird because he was known when he was hired, Ryan, as this defensive whiz, and he was kind of the Robert Saleh of what was it, like 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, he was the guy that everyone talked about was this defensive wizard, and now we kind of know that it was more Seattle's players as opposed to his schemes. So when you put it that way, I just don't know what they're going to do with this roster. You might be able to have a more clear answer, but it's just you're not like, Carolina sold all in on a rebuild, and look at what's happening to them. They spent every single draft pick on a defensive player, and they went out there and held the potent offense to 16 points. So you might just have to do that. I don't know. And I said the same response when they lost the Super Bowl. I said the same thing when they started blowing all these games. I don't know why this team is the way it is. I don't.
I think they need to. I think the culture needs to change. They need to do a complete 180. So I really think I'm always a big proponent of just blowing it up when it's not working, and I think that's what this team needs to do from top to bottom. They just need to get new guys in the front office. They need to get new guys on the coaching staff. They need to bring in fresh young talent. I know that's easier said than done, but what they're doing right now and what they've been doing for the past few years, it's clearly not working. So I think they need to make an organizational shift. I think that there needs to be a lot of change this offseason if they want to get back to being competitive. Surprisingly, right now, I don't think anyone would have believed you if you said this at the start of the year through 5 weeks. They would be in line for the second overall draft pick. The Giants right now hold the first overall draft pick, and the Jets hold the third. And that's based off the strength of schedule tiebreaker. The Giants have the lightest strength of schedule tiebreaker, so they're currently in the first pick, so they would have a chance to take Trevor Lawrence. Now, Matt, I gotta imagine if the Falcons somehow do really bottom out this year and get the number 1 pick, you have to take Trevor Lawrence, right?
No, I would trade out of that pick if I'm Atlanta.
Really?
They got a lot more problems than quarterback. I mean, imagine the amount of picks you could get for that. And obviously, Trevor Lawrence is Trevor Lawrence, but and this will turn out to be what Sacramento did with Luka Doncic in the NBA. That would be something of that caliber. But I don't know. I think you got to address the defense, and you could still buy yourself. You're still going to suck for another year or two. You could take another quarterback, or you could even when you trade back. You're not going to trade back too far. I mean, it's going to be a team in the top 10 that's going to want to go up and get him. So you could get another quarterback there and then fix your defense. I don't know. If I'm Atlanta, I have a lot more concerns in quarterback. Because I thought about that too, Ryan, but what does that do? I mean, you take Trevor Lawrence and then 32 picks go by, and then you got to figure out how you're going to address everything else.
I don't know. I hate to put the guy in a pedestal. And in most cases I agree with the way you see it, but this guy seems like a generational talent that even if you have other needs, if that guy's there, it'd be real hard to pass up 5 cost-controlled years of having him on your roster.
Yeah, but what is it with having cost-controlled years on the roster when you're going to be trying to get into a shootout and letting up 30 plus points every week.
Well, it's easier to
And what
build
is
a
it?
team around a cheap quarterback that has a lot of talent than a guy like Matt Ryan, who right now has a pretty high cap figure.
But like you said, you're going to be stuck with him for another year or two. And on top of that, what does it say about the Falcons offense that at home they only scored 16 points with 10 or 11 first round picks starting, going up against a team in Carolina that has almost every player on their defense like under the age of 30 and a lot of rookies sprinkled in? What does it say about the offense? So it's not like you're just going to plug in a new guy and it's going to work. I mean, there's clearly something's not right about the offense either. Only scored 16 points against a Carolina team that you should score 30 against.
I don't know. It's just
With
it's
11 first round picks on your team on offense, and you only score 16 points. I get it was bound to happen at some point, but I mean, I don't think putting a cheap quarterback in there is the
yeah.
end
But
all
if I
be all
told you that this
solution.
guy in a few years, even
I'm
I'll
not
go even
denying
further.
he's good. I'm not. I understand the caliber that he brings to the table. I'm not denying that.
I just
And
don't
I
think you
think
can
if
pass
you're
up on that talent. It's not like he was. It's not like he's. I'm trying to think of a good comparison. I'm not trying to discredit Baker Mayfield. He's a very good talent, but it's not like he's Baker Mayfield. Like he's he arguably is going to be the next great talent in the NFL. And
well, Andrew Luck was the same way, and he retired after.
well, that was he still showed that he was an elite quarterback though
And I'm
for
not
7
denying
years.
Trevor Lawrence. I'm saying if you're either New York team and you're in that position, you take him in a heartbeat and you kick Darnold and Jones to the curb. But when you have a veteran quarterback that can at least guide and teach younger people, I think that's a good commodity to have while you can fix the rest of the team and then address the quarterback later. And I get that's the most important piece in a lot of aspects, but clearly with this Falcons team, Matt Ryan's not the issue. And I'm not saying that, he's better than Trevor Lawrence, but I'm just saying that for right now, I mean, when you have someone who could sell tickets and make the team watchable, and we've had this debate in baseball, Ryan, if you can have a quarterback that could at least make the team watchable while you fix everything else, I think you trade out of that pick if you're Atlanta. I really do.
I don't know, it would just be hard
But
for me to.
I mean, hopefully for them, they don't have to make that decision, and the Giants suck enough to get that number one overall pick, or the Jets do. Then they won't have to make a decision like that, and then it'll be a lot clearer.
I don't know. If I'm it would just be real tough for me to pass up on that guy, even with all the issues. But I said I wanted to moving maybe towards something a little more positive. I want to talk about the Panthers because this is a team that, as you brought up earlier, nobody expected anything out of this year. But now they've won 3 straight games. They're 3-2. They're right in the. It's only been 5 weeks, but they're right in the thick of the playoff race. I think through 5 weeks, the Matt Rule hire looks pretty good. Bringing Joe Brady in looks pretty good. He's been able to design a lot of offensive concepts that have worked even without having Christian McCaffrey on the field the past few weeks. It's not the most explosive offense, but clearly what they've built is good for the pieces that they do have. And I don't know. I think there's a lot to be encouraged by. I mean, you look at this team on paper, it's obviously not the most talented roster in the league, but I think they're showing a lot of signs to be encouraged by going forward. And if I'm a Panthers fan, I think I'd have to be pretty excited. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs this year. I think there's obviously ways they still need to go, but I still think it's impressive what they've been able to do through 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's two people that should get all the praise. Joe Brady, number one, Teddy Bridgewater, number 1A. I think this start is a testament to how good of a quarterback Teddy Bridgewater is. For any of the doubters that may or may not still be out there with this guy, he's a capable starter in the NFL. Obviously, had that really tough luck injury. He had to come back from that. Played really well in New Orleans last year, and he's the quarter that's money well spent. And it was a lot of people on the free agent market didn't really know if Teddy Bridgewater was going to be like this quarterback for a franchise, and he's still young and he's still good. So going out there with the two gloves on his hands and playing really well. So the Carolina proved me wrong for sure. I mean, if you're looking at their two records, Ryan, Carolina and Atlanta, my preview had them flop or flipped. So they proved me wrong for sure, and I'll admit that. So they're not gonna make the playoffs, but it's encouraging for sure. And it shows, Ryan, that drafting, if you're committing to one side of the ball to fix, and Carolina for years had that older defense, especially when Cam was there, they scrapped it all. And as I said, drafted all defensive players, and they're starting to hit on a bunch of them. So cast a wide net. I think Atlanta needs to do the same thing. But Carolina is a good model for Atlanta to follow after. I'll say that.
So right now, in case anybody is interested, the Panthers would actually be on the outside looking in because there's a team that's under 500 right now that's leading the division that would get in, even with 7 teams. But as I said, they're still right in it. They're not gonna. Matt said, and I agree. They're not gonna make it in this year. There's just more talented teams. But even if they get 6 wins, I think that's a successful season. I think that's well within the realm of possibility based on how they've started. Another team that's been kind of surprising so far this year has been the Las Vegas Raiders, who went into Arrowhead, went into Kansas City, and put up 40 points, and they won in a shootout over the Kansas City Chiefs 40-32, something that not many people expected. I know I certainly didn't expect it. Mahomes did not have his greatest performance. He was obviously Mahomes, but there were, I think, a few throws he'd probably like to have back. Derek Carr, he obviously has a reputation, but he put up, I know some people are saying it was arguably the best performance of his career. I don't know if I would go that far. I want to watch it back just to see how good he actually was, but still he did what he needed to do. That offense did what they needed to do. The defense is still a major question mark. I know you're playing the Chiefs, but it still goes back to their performance the previous 4 weeks. But Matt, this is a Raiders team now that's 3-2. They're only one game behind the Chiefs, and now they've taken at least one game from them. I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. They're still going to win the division, but I think at least for me, this kind of I'm buying into the Raiders a little more than I was previously. I think as I said, the defense is a major issue. I don't know how that's going to hold up, but I do think that now I can kind of see this team sneaking into a playoff berth.
Well, they could have been 4-1. They had a couple breaks that didn't go their way, a couple bad penalties when they were in New England a few weeks ago. Crazy what a loss at home will do to you if you're the Chiefs. I saw tweets saying Patrick Mahomes is a system quarterback. That was a fun tweet to see. I will say the Chiefs have not looked invincible this year. I get they're 4-1. If you go back and you look at the Charger game, you go back and you look at the New England game, I get they won by 16 points last Monday, Ryan, but they did not look good against the Patriots, a team that obviously had a lot of other things going on that night. And for a while, Brian Hoyer and Jarrett Stidham kept them in the game. Well, let me rephrase. Jarrett Stidham kept them in the game. But I'm not going to take away this win for Vegas. We didn't really know. We thought they were kind of just going to be like a meh team, but they're on the other side of meh. They're like, okay. They're right, Ryan. Sneak into the playoffs. A healthy Jonathan Abram on the back end of that defense is really helping. I think he's turning into one of the better safeties in the NFL, and he will be down the road. It's encouraging to see for a franchise that, we've talked about it with our Raider fan friends. Ryan, this franchise really hasn't been good in our lifetime outside of maybe a few years now and then. Our parents probably saw more of the Raiders' dominance in their lifetime, but it's, we don't like Derek Carr as much as everyone else, but he's playing well, so I'll give him credit. But the Chiefs, Ryan, might be a little hangover from the Super Bowl. I don't know. I get they're 4-1, but there's they don't look as invincible as past years. I don't know if that's it's not a hot take. I get they're 4-1, but there's been some stretches within games where they're not just steamrolling everybody like they did last year. Like teams are competitive against them now. I don't know if that's more so the offense or the defense or just the fact that the gap's kind of closing, but a few of their games this year, teams were able to hang around with them.
Both of these teams have statement games coming up. So next Sunday night, the Raiders will be at home playing against the Buccaneers. So I think that could be not that they have. I mean, I know they beat the Saints, and the Saints are dealing with injury issues, but I know that was probably a statement win. The Chiefs was a statement win, but if they are able to beat the Buccaneers on Sunday night in front of a national audience, I think that would really go a long way to legitimizing that they're a team to watch this year. The Chiefs have a 5 p.m. game next Monday as part of the schedule reshuffling, where they're going to be going to Buffalo. I think that's going to be an interesting game. I really want to see what happens there. More so, I'd say more so for the Bills side to see if they are going to be a legit AFC contender, if they are able to beat the Chiefs. But man, I can't remember the last. I mean, I'm probably forgetting something pretty simple, but I don't remember the last time this Chiefs team lost 2 games in a row. So I mean, I'd have to go back to their
I mean,
schedule and look.
I know they struggled early on last year. I mean, they did have 4 losses going into December, I think, last year.
They did lose 2
And
straight last year. They lost
yeah,
19-13 to Indy, and then they lost 31-24 to Houston.
and Mahomes at one point got hurt last year too. And I'm not. So they did start slow last year. I mean, slow for their standards, and kind of got on late. So I'm not taking anything away from this Chiefs team. I want our listeners to know that, but there's just I don't think it's going to be such a given, if you know what I mean. I mean, they say any given Sunday, anything can happen, but I think this shows that they're beatable. I mean, Vegas went in there and they didn't really care who they were playing, and they came out with a win. And I think they had that same philosophy against the Saints, and I think it's a very real possibility they'll beat the Buccaneers next week. So I think it's more of a celebration of how close Vegas is to being competitive, but something to keep an eye on for sure with Kansas City, because this is the second straight game where Mahomes didn't really look himself. I think the Monday night game against New England was more so Bill's defense. I don't think Mahomes has really figured out Belichick's scheme yet, but we'll see for sure. I think if they could beat Buffalo Monday night, it's at Buffalo, right?
Yes.
They could win on the road, then everything's fine again. So we'll see.
The Chiefs were undefeated going into the day, and they picked up their first loss. Another team undefeated going into the day was the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming off of their early bye, which wasn't expected, and they were able to stay undefeated. They improved to 4-0 with a 38-29 win over the Philadelphia Eagles. The Steelers were up by as much as 31-14, but then the Eagles were able to come back, make it a 2-point game, 31-29. But they were not able to complete the comeback. There was a questionable decision that I guess we could talk about in a second. Late in the game, on 4th and 5 inside Steelers territory, that Doug was not as aggressive on as I would have liked him to have been. But I want to talk about the Steelers first, Matt. So they're 4-0. They beat the Giants by 10 points week 1. They beat Denver by 5 points week 2. They beat the Texans by a touchdown week 3. And now they were lucky, and I mean that, they were lucky to get out of this Eagles game with a W 38-29. I get that they're 4-0. I get that their defense has talent on it. I get that Ben has been probably about as good as you could have probably hoped coming into the season with based on everything going on. But is it wrong of me to say that I'm not impressed by this team? I get that they're 4-0, but
Are you
their
going to
wins
use
have
the F?
really
You're
not
going to use the F
been.
word with this? Are you going to call them the F word?
I don't know if I want to go that far, but I hate listen, they're beating the teams that they need to beat. I get that. I get that the games any given Sunday, things can happen you wouldn't expect, but I don't know if it's I expected more from this team or what, but it's just I don't know what to make of this team yet. I really don't think I don't think they're a 4-0 team, I think is my point.
They've
I
also
think they
played
have
three
very
straight.
clear flaws.
They've also played 3 straight games at home, with their opener being at the Giants. So I could kind of see your point, to where we don't really know how they fare against good competition. I mean, you beat the Giants, Broncos, who were injured at the time and getting injured in that game. and then Houston. The real test would have been if they were able to play Tennessee, Ryan. I think that would have been a good indicator. But of course, they had to reshuffle everything. I w- I was ready to eat my words, Ryan, but now seeing that you are ready, almost there to use the F word with them, maybe I'll stay with you on that one because at the beginning of the year, I said they were going to be watchable and decent, but they were like 9-7 good. I didn't think they were going to be 4-0 to start the year good. I mean, granted, you could still finish 9-7, but I I don't know. I mean, it's nice that they surprisingly haven't started 4-0 since 1979, which I was kind of surprised to see with this franchise. But they're in a really competitive division. I think it'll be a real telltale sign, not necessarily when they play the Browns, because I think they're going to beat the Browns by 10 points or more.
Oh, see, I disagree. I was going to make the argument that Pittsburgh's the third best team in this division right now.
No, I think Cleveland are frauds. I don't think the Steelers are
Oh,
frauds yet.
oh,
I think everyone in the AFC North is a fraud for different
oh.
reasons. The Ravens are in the playoffs, and then the other two are for different reasons. But I won't call them any of them frauds yet. But they're that whole division's a little suspect. We'll just say that for different reasons. So and you got to remember, Ryan, they're all going to beat up on each other. They really haven't played any games against each other yet within the division. Either that, other than the Bengals, who have just been getting blown out by everyone so far. But we'll see. Like they're another team like the Falcons now because their quarterback's like 35. Their defense is really good though, and their defense is gonna to really keep them in games. So I defense wins championships. So we'll see.
I think we talked about before the season started how if this team was going to make the playoffs, they need to start out fast against a relatively easy start to their season. I know that the Titans were initially part of that, but to their credit, they have won 4 games to begin the year, so they've put themselves in a very good position to make it in the playoffs, especially with 7 teams. It'd be real difficult, especially with some of the teams they still have to play, to not make it in. I mean, you look at this schedule, you still play Cincinnati twice. I know it's an AFC North battle, but they should be able to beat Cincinnati twice. They still have to play Washington. That should most likely be a win. You play Jacksonville. I'd be shocked if they wouldn't win that. So that puts you at 8 wins, and then you just need to get one more win somewhere else. Maybe that's at Dallas. Maybe you pull out a win against Cleveland at some point, or maybe you beat Indianapolis. But it'd be real hard for this team to miss the playoffs. So they put themselves in a good position. I will say that. On the other side, the Eagles, they started off once again offensively a little slow. The Steelers' run defense, this isn't getting talked enough. It was actually very good. Miles Sanders had the 74-yard run on the third down draw play, but other than that, he really didn't have much else going for him on the ground. And I think only one other running back on the team got a carry, and that was Boston Scott, and he had 1 carry. And I think that went for maybe 3 or 4 yards. Wentz, there were still issues. The the first interception, I don't think was all on him. I think he has some of the blame, but I think a penalty should have been called for illegal contact on Zach Ertz, who was another issue altogether. The second interception was just a prayer at the end of the game. I don't really count that. I think that was the offense is kind of starting to turn things around. People are going to point to the offensive line. I think that based on who they were playing, I thought they did pretty well, especially with all the moving parts and with Lane Johnson not being in there for the entire game again. The defense, I think, is more of a major question at this point. Uh, I'd I'd probably advocate for Jim Schwartz to be fired after what he did yesterday, leaving Nate Gary on a guy that had 3 touchdowns already. I don't know how you miss that. I don't know how someone doesn't call a timeout just to get some different personnel on the field. I don't know why he wasn't on the tight. I'll say I don't know why he was on the field to begin with. I don't know why he wasn't put on the tight end. But Matt, I'm only saying this because they're in the NFC East. They're they're still in a good position to make the playoffs. I saw some encouraging signs yesterday. If they can just hunker some things down, I think that this team could maybe do something. I'm trying to think about how I want to phrase this. I get that they're 1-3-1, but you look at their upcoming schedule. I know they have Baltimore, but after that, there's 3 winnable games that they could use to get back on track.
I mean, Ryan, the Giants still have a chance to make the playoffs in your division. What doesn't help the cause is that you end the season with Cleveland, Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona, Dallas, and then Washington. So I get the last 2 games are winnable, but that stretch of 5 games from November 20, so from Thanksgiving to basically Christmas, I see 5 losses right there. So
I don't
you're
know if you
gonna,
can say that.
so you're gonna have to no, because you just talked up Cleveland, so don't act like that's an easy game. We talked up you talk up Arizona all the time. Green Bay's undefeated. New Orleans always gives you trouble, and then Seattle looks like the best team in the NFL. So I like,
None of those teams have Travis Fulgham though, is my point. So my
well, yeah,
point
because
is, so the offensive line, I said it looked good, and I think you can make the case. You throw these guys in here right now, early in the season. You didn't want to have to do it, but you throw these guys in here. You throw Herbig in there. You throw Driscoll in there. You throw Mailata in there. You could say Pryor. I'm not a big Pryor guy. I really think he's really been a big issue this year, but you let them learn together. You let them forge together like nice piece of steel. You just forge them together right now, get them battle tested. And then you come out of the bye week. You have basically your entire offense, as long as nothing else happens, should be healthy. So you have that offensive line that finally has some cohesion. You get Dallas Goedert back, who should be a much better threat at the tight end position. So you don't have to just keep letting Zach Ertz do whatever the hell he's been doing this year. You get Jalen Rager back, who should add a nice new dynamic, fresh dynamic to the offense. You pair them with Greg Ward, who's clearly a very good wide receiver. Travis Fulgham, who might be going to the Hall of Fame pretty soon. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he looks pretty good. If Wentz just stops with the bad decisions, I think the offense will look pretty good. Now, the defense, that's a big question. I don't know what to make of this defense. They have so much invested in the defensive line, and it just, I'd like to see a little more out of it, but if they can just execute better on that end, I think that this team could steal some games down the road and make the playoffs. You can make the case.
I mean, I can make the case that the Giants are going to make the playoffs too,
Well, no,
Ryan.
and I see
They're only one
you
game
can't do
back, or
that
two
though.
games. They're only 2 games back,
Yeah,
Ryan.
but there's the difference is that they don't have the talent that the Eagles have.
Yeah, they don't have a guy that nobody heard of before last Sunday night, arguably before today, or and Travis Fulgham. Ryan, I see like 5 wins on your schedule. I mean, how many points are you going to lose to the Ravens by next week? 10,
Um,
17,
listen,
14?
all right, listen. It's gonna be a little bit of a hot take. I think they can keep it close at home. There were encouraging signs. You just hunker down defensively in practice this week. You
Yeah, so are
don't
they what receiver are they going to put Nathan Gary on this week? What speed receiver are they going to have him try and keep up with this week?
I think Jim Schwartz has learned his lesson and he won't do that again. But I don't. I think I know who they're playing, but I'm not saying they're gonna win. I'm not picking them to win, but I think they can keep it close. And then you beat New York, you beat Dallas, you head into the bye week, you come out of the bye week, you beat New York again, you travel to Cleveland, you're on a 3-game winning streak, you got some momentum. Hey,
No,
maybe you
you
pull a
talked
win
up
out
Cleveland.
there.
That's a loss. You talked them up 5 minutes
Yeah,
ago.
but
That's a
Cleveland can't win
loss.
every game, so maybe they lose that
No.
one. Following week, they haven't had much luck against Seattle. That's got to turn around at some point. So why not? Maybe it happens this year. You go to Green Bay. They won in Green Bay last year. Hey, who knows? Any given Sunday, anything can happen. You come back to New Orleans. New Orleans isn't the same team this year, Matt. We all know that. That could be a win. You travel to Arizona looking for revenge, battle of the bird teams. Hey, maybe we clip their wings to get another win there. You go to Dallas. Listen, they're not looking too good. They have a mediocre guy quarterback. Maybe you sweep the Cowboys this year, and then you go into Sunday, January 3rd. You can rest the starters. Maybe you lose to Washington again, but you're
Yeah,
already
what
in the
does that get you,
playoffs.
like 6, 9, and 1?
No, I listen. You could make the case. So I said that if you
Oh,
lose to
stop.
Baltimore,
I'm gonna
that's
save
four
you from whatever. I'm
losses.
gonna save you from whatever take you're about to make here. Just stop. It's
I could legitimately see 9-6-1.
no
You could make the
way.
case.
No way. How are you more like this than me with the Patriots? I thought it would have been opposite. I thought you would have been much
I'm buying in. I
more
said
level headed.
last week, if you remember, I pounded my fist on the table. I'm doing it again. I'm buying into this team because that's the only way I'm going to stay sane.
Did you know Carson Wentz hasn't thrown for over 300 yards at any point this year in a game?
We're not going to get
And
the
you
number
haven't
one overall.
had a and you haven't had anyone rush for over 100 yards at any point this year.
Okay, in all
So
fairness, Sanders had 95 back-to-back weeks.
that doesn't matter. It's not 100. Couldn't get
I'm
five
just saying.
more.
I'm
Carson Wentz
just.
hasn't been anywhere near 300.
That's fine. They're doing what they need to do. They're getting all their bumps out of the way early. They're getting.
All their
Listen,
bumps out of the way. They played the Bengals and like the
listen.
football team
You
and
want to talk about
the
peaking at the
Bengals.
right time? This team is going to peak at the right time. Do what they need to do. The only reason I wanted them to lose out initially was so they could get Trevor Lawrence. But now they're not going to be able to get the number one overall pick because there's clearly teams that are worse than the Eagles. And with Dak going down, that there's a path now to the division title. Because I don't trust Andy Dalton in that offense. I
Yeah,
think
and
that
who are you going
offense
to
is going
get
to be
blown
very
out by?
hamstrung.
Who are you going to get blown out by in the first round? The Rams?
Listen, you make it in, anything can happen. Who's to say?
All right,
You have
next
all the
game.
momentum. Who's to say?
All right.
Seattle barely made it in the 1 year, and they beat New Orleans. So
Yeah. Well,
who's to say?
they were also playing at home in front of 100,000 people or whatever. So
Well, the Eagles would be
noisy
playing at
people.
home too because they'd be a division title winner.
All right, next game.
Go
Next
Birds.
game.
Okay, this is actually an interesting one for more reasons than one. San Francisco got absolutely throttled by the Miami Dolphins. San Francisco at home, I should say, got throttled by the Miami Dolphins 43-17. Jimmy Garoppolo got benched. They brought in CJ Beathard. It didn't, I mean, they scored some points, obviously, but it didn't make much of a difference. I don't know. This 49ers team is concerning. I wish I just stayed with my initial take that I didn't trust this team this year, but I bought in. I was like, oh, they have all this talent. They have all these guys coming back. They'll be fine. I should have just stuck with my initial take that I didn't trust them because I think this was another team we said they need to start off fast because they have a tough stretch of games in the middle of the season. And they beat the Jets and the Giants, but they're 2-3 right now. Yeah, and it's been talked about already, Matt, but their upcoming schedule, you play the Rams, the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Packers, the Saints, the Rams, and the Bills over a span of 7 weeks. You could make the case. There's 7 losses right there. 0-7. You could make the case that in 10 weeks, this team is going to be 2-10. Now, is that going to happen? No, probably not. This team still has talent. Obviously, they have a good coaching staff. They'll get some wins in there somewhere. I don't know where they're going to be, but they'll get some wins. But Matt, this team has put themselves in a hell of a hole to try to climb themselves out of, especially in arguably the best division in football. So I don't know. Right now, they don't have a quarterback. They're still dealing with injury issues. They're dealing with really poor performance from the offensive line. I don't think it's a stretch to say that even with 7 teams, this team's not going to make the playoffs this year.
Well, it doesn't help their cause that the Rams are really good. I think when you look at their schedule, you can realistically say, just based off the teams that they played, they really should be 5-0. Ryan, I mean, I'll give them a pass at the Arizona game, but it's a game they probably should have won. But you can't lose to the Eagles after the way they were playing, and you
Eagles are
certainly
looking good though. They could be a good team.
you certainly can't lose to Miami, or at least not give up 43 points at home to Miami. Granted, I said the Dolphins when we first got on the Zoom call. I said the Dolphins look really good. I wouldn't be surprised, Ryan, if the Dolphins finish higher than the Patriots in this division. I think depends how long Cam's out for, but Miami's good, and they give Brian Flores a lot of crap for the way they started last year, but ever since like early November of last year, the Dolphins have been one of the better teams uh, in terms of their caliber in the league. I mean, just in terms of consistently competing every week. And I think Fitzpatrick has a lot to do with that. But San Francisco, it's funny, Ryan. It's crazy what a first, and I said this too. Last year when they went 13-3 or whatever it was, they were playing on like a third place schedule. So it's crazy what a first place schedule will do to you, Ryan. Granted, they haven't really had to take effect of that yet because they're playing interdivisional opponents, but you're going to find out pretty quickly, right? Because you still have to play Green Bay, you still have to play New Orleans, and obviously you get Seattle twice, which is basically a de facto first place team right there. So it's easy to go 13-3 on a third place schedule. And I think I said this when we were previewing them too. Let's see them go 13-3 on a first place schedule. Because really the only team to consistently win year in and year out on a first place schedule has been the Patriots. And you can make the argument the Saints as well, maybe the Packers, but it hasn't been done a lot. And obviously the sticky turf and MetLife didn't help their cause with a lot of the injuries. I don't think Garoppolo's all to blame for yesterday. You mentioned the offensive line. For a guy who's coming back from a high ankle sprain, there wasn't really a lot there to protect himself. But yeah, there's a lot of problems here. I think they'll win a couple games now and then, but I think I said this on our preview pod. It's going to be tough for them this year because you're not going to play like, I don't know who was third place in the NFC East a couple years ago. Ryan, would it be like the Giants or somebody or Washington? You're not going to play Washington every year. Like you're not going to play Detroit every year. You're not going to play, I don't know, Atlanta every year. You're going to have to, if you go to the Super Bowl and you get a first place schedule and you win your division, you're going to have to play better teams. So I always have said on this podcast, good teams win the games they're supposed to, and they haven't won the games they're supposed to, not even before they play the first place schedule games yet. So it's going to be a tough spot. You mentioned a deep hole for them to dig out of. Obviously, that sounds a little more dramatic because it's only a 2-3 record, but it's a lot deeper than people think for sure. We're going to find out how good the Rams are, by the way, on Sunday Night Football. We're going to find out really quick how good they are.
If people are interested, this was from the ESPN analytics team. Jimmy Garoppolo had a 1.4 QBR yesterday, which is the lowest in any game by any quarterback this season. I don't think that he is this bad. I don't think that the team is this bad. But I think you have to chalk it up as this isn't their year. I really don't even think it's a Super Bowl hangover. I don't think that it just seems like they don't have it this year. So I think
also too, Ryan, I had a lot of fantasy investment in this game, so I was watching most of this when it came on Red Zone. They had a couple quick drives, and just like that, they were down 14-0. So that automatically changes your game plan when you're down 14-0 early on in the first quarter. So yeah, obviously just get Garoppolo back. And the whole benching thing, they said it was just to protect him because he just came back from an injury. I think that was just because he sucked. I don't know why Kyle Shanahan loves CJ Beathard so much, but it's gotten in back-to-back weeks. So, I mean, I'm just, as a Patriots fan, I'm glad we didn't pay Jimmy Garoppolo all that money. But I don't know. I just don't think they have a lot of passing options, Ryan. Like I said this last year, I don't think they have a lot of receivers that they could go to, like to trust. I mean, you have Ayuk, who's the rookie. You have what, like Kendrick Bourne? Isn't Debo Samuel hurt, or is he playing? Or does he have COVID or something?
I think he came back recently.
So you have him. You have George Kittle, but like you don't have a lot of real passing threats that Garoppolo can consistently go to. I mean, it's not like you have like some of the weapons that like Dak Prescott had in Dallas, or obviously you're not going to get that everywhere you go, but you either commit to the run or you commit to the pass. And yesterday it was kind of like this weird mix of both. So they're in a tough spot for sure.
Just saying, there's a former 49ers quarterback out in free agency that might be able to lead them.
Well, I think a lot of other teams need him before San Francisco does.
I would love to see him in Shanahan's offense, though. I think he would look incredible.
But yeah, but if you put him on either New York team, they're turned around. They'll win a bunch of games much faster than that other two quarterbacks that are there right now.
I agree with you about the Giants. I don't know about the Jets. I don't think he
Can
would
you
do anything with
imagine?
the Jets.
Can you imagine him and Saquon on top of Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan
It would,
Ingram?
it would be a good offense, yeah.
That team wins like 8 games right there, at least. I mean, obviously they still have a bad offensive line, but that former 49ers quarterback that you're mentioning is hard to bring down.
Yes.
So, and he makes a lot. He's a lot better with the ball than Daniel Jones is. So
100%.
there you
And
go, Giants fans.
we're gonna
Colin
talk
Kaepernick.
about. Actually, you know what? I was gonna say we're gonna talk about it in a second, but since it was brought up, we will talk about the Giants who lost 37-34. Obviously, the more pressing story from this game was the loss of Dak Prescott for what's likely going to be the rest of the season with a very gruesome ankle injury. Now, he did have surgery last night, and it seems from the things I was reading, he's in good spirits. I think they said that he was actually going to be sent home today. He might have already been sent home. I don't know, but regardless, it seems like the surgery went well. So now it's just all about rehab and hoping he gets back to his previous form, which hopefully he can, because it's a real shame that this guy tried to get what he was worth with a contract and was forced to just keep signing these franchise tags because the Cowboys want to offer him below market contracts. And now in a contract year, after being so durable, this is the year that this happens. It's really sad to see. But the Cowboys, to their credit, they put in Andy Dalton. Michael Gallup made a couple nice catches down the stretch, and the Cowboys won the game by 3. I, 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 I think so. The Giants are bad. That I think we can agree on that. The
I do want
Cowboys,
to say one thing about Prescott though, is for the people, all the Cowboy fans out there, and we talked about this during our preview of how he's not always appreciated in their fan base. You can't have it both ways. So he goes down with the injury, right? And people criticized him all throughout the beginning of the year, saying he's not the guy, kind of thing. So when he goes down with this injury, you can't then all of a sudden say, "Oh, the season's over." You can't have it both ways, because you can't criticize this guy and then all of a sudden be like, "Oh, I miss Dak Prescott." Imagine if we just had Dak Prescott. You know what I mean, Ryan? Like, Cowboys fans can't have it both ways with this. And you and I, we've always talked about, if he goes and gets his money elsewhere, he's going to have a lot more appreciation from the fan base and probably a better option to win. But it was sad to see for a guy who really, he's been the most durable quarterback in the NFL, Ryan. I mean, him and Russell Wilson are right up there at the top in terms of just never missing starts. And I think those two are a lot more similar than a lot of people will make them out to be, Wilson and Prescott. And I think Prescott's going to bounce back in a really big way. But I just want to get it out there that Cowboys fans, you can't criticize and bash the guy and then all of a sudden want him back as your quarterback, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying, Ryan? Like, you can't have it both ways with this. So, and then it was funny, or not funny, but you see Skip Bayless going, "Oh no," and he was the same guy who criticized Dak at the beginning of the year. But I think Dak will benefit if he goes elsewhere. I mean, he has a lot of weapons there, but it's tough to see him in a contract year go down. But I don't know. It was rough to see. He's that guy does everything the right way.
well,
Like,
we're
there's no
gonna see, Matt. I've heard, and I know you've heard the same things from the fan base in general. I'm not saying every fan feels this way, but I have seen way too many takes to where they said that if you put Andy Dalton in instead of Dak, nothing changes. Well, we're going to find out real quickly how true that is.
that is the most horrendous take I think I've ever heard, and we've heard that a lot. I mean, and these were the same people, Ryan, who were criticizing Andy Dalton 2 years ago. Don't forget. I
Well, and
mean,
I will say this,
don't forget.
the Cowboys are lucky that they have one of the better backup quarterbacks in football. But I need to preface that by saying he's a backup for a reason. If there was a team out there that wanted him to start, he'd be starting right now. But he had to take the backup deal with the Cowboys. I know he gave him a little hometown discount with the contract, but there's a reason why he was sitting on the bench and holding a clipboard the first 4.5 weeks of the season.
And mind you, too, there's a reason why the Bears traded for a guy who put a huge cap hit on them in Nick Foles as opposed to signing him. And there's a reason why the Patriots waited until June and got Cam Newton as opposed to Andy Dalton sitting there. If he was a capable guy, either of those two teams would have had him. Carolina, another team in that same boat. So let's not start singing the praises of Andy Dalton and all the Dak Prescott is in the top 10 or top 15 quarterback. That's the most ridiculous take I've ever heard in my life. And then those same Cowboys fans, Ryan, are going to probably use the injury to say, oh, well, is he going to ever go back to his form before, even though they were bashing him saying he wasn't a top 10 quarterback. So it's like, you and I have always said the grass is always greener on the other side. Well, here we are at the other side, right, Ryan? So they're going to find out really quickly how good Dak Prescott was for that team, in my opinion. And I mean, with those weapons around Andy Dalton, like, they're going to make him look better than he actually is. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but when you have Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Amari Cooper, you have all those guys sitting there. I mean, you're gonna still be able to kind of stay afloat, but Prescott brings you to a whole nother level. And they sit there and say, oh, well, they got off to a really slow start. Oh, it's Dak's fault. That's completely false. I mean, the defense is awful. And then you had all those injuries on top of it. So I just feel bad for Dak Prescott. He's had nothing but, taking crap from the fan base, no matter how many games he starts, no matter how many good performances, big throws he makes, right? I mean, I just feel bad for this guy. And I think he will finally get the appreciation that he deserves when they see Andy Dalton for, 12 games, 13 games? Well, no, 5.
Games.
So I'm really bad at math. So you're going to see Andy Dalton for 11 games, Cowboy fans. So there you go.
I think I need people to realize this. This offense was very, very good. I'd say it was probably elite with Dak Prescott under center. It's not going to be that with Andy Dalton. He's not the same type of guy. The offense is going to drop off. And the problem with that is that because the offense was so prolific, it could make up for all the flaws on the defensive end. Well, that's not going to be the same anymore. This team can't let up 34 points a game anymore, or whatever. It's 36 points. I'm sorry. I was 2 points off. This team can't let up 36 points a game anymore and expect to still be in the game.
Well, they also
Andy
let up
Dalton
34.
Can be serviceable, but he's not going to score 37 points a week.
They also let up 34 points to a Giants team, Ryan, that scored like 47 points total through 4 games. 47 points through 4 games, and they let up 34 in one game to that same team. So there's your defense right there. And you're going to sit there and still say that Dak's the issue. I mean, get out of here, man. Like,
their defense also did lose Tristan Hill to apparently a torn ACL. He was the guy, if the name sounds familiar, that was involved in the Chris Carson leg thing a couple weeks back on Sunday Night Football when he kind of rolled over his leg, did the alligator roll. So that name sounds familiar. That's why he's out for the year. I'm looking at the Cowboys schedule. Before I get in, I want to say one thing about the Giants. They suck. I texted in the group chat yesterday. I don't know how anybody can be a fan of this team because it's awful watching them play the game of football. I don't know how you can look at listen, I get that Daniel Jones did okay, but with 2 minutes to go on the road with a chance to get your team in position to win the game, you were able to run 6 plays and you had to punt the ball away. And then he gave it back to Dallas, and they won the game. That was his chance to prove to everybody, listen, I can lead this team. I'm the guy. I'm going to, he couldn't even do that. But
they don't really throw the ball down the field a lot either. At least in the times that I watched them yesterday, there's nothing that really stands out about this guy. And then it's funny, we know some Giants fans out there, like a friend of a friend that like sit there and say, oh, well, Danny Dimes is the guy. We wouldn't draft Trevor Lawrence if he was there. I mean, what better way to put pressure on Daniel Jones to succeed than drafting Trevor Lawrence? So it's just, and then it's funny because Joe Judge will probably get the blame before Danny Dimes does. And I don't think Joe Judge was handed just an absolute tall of a task to turn this franchise around. Now, I don't think this isn't going to be done by just one guy. So don't blame Joe Judge. He's been getting a lot of rave reviews, but they do suck, Ryan. But we do know Giants fans. I was hoping they would pull one out for Mr. Denegris's birthday, but they unfortunately fell short.
Happy birthday, Glenn Denegris. Matt, who gets fired first, Adam Gase or Dave Gettleman?
I don't think either. I mean,
Got to pick one. Who gets fired first?
I think Dave Gettleman's got a lifetime contract, man. I would say Gase, but again, Gase, we're not going to talk about the Jets, but in all the games that Darnold hasn't played, I saw this tweet. They've lost every game that Darnold hasn't played. It's clearly not his fault. And then the Giants, Gettleman he's been so successful at finding other things to blame to where it's not his fault. It was Odell Beckham, then it was the culture. You got the bad culture out when in reality, you still got guys swinging at people on the sideline. Yeah, I would say Gase, but I don't think either are going to get fired this season. I really don't. Like, is that too unrealistic to say? I mean, those guys feel like they're untouchable. Gettleman should have gone 2 years ago.
Both New York franchises are bad, and that's my last point on that. The final game of the day, Sunday Night Football, and what a game it was. The 1-3 Minnesota Vikings traveling to the undefeated Seattle Seahawks. And damn it, the Vikings, Matt, they looked like they were going to take this one and shock the world. They shut out the Seahawks in the first half, but in the subpar conditions, the Seahawks were able to storm back. They put up 21 points in the third quarter, and then they scored the touchdown late in the fourth, very late in the fourth, and they ended up winning the game by 1 point. So the Vikings dropped to and then a very bad 1-4. That was probably their chance to get back into the playoff race. But now I don't know if they're going to be able to dig themselves out of this one. The Seahawks, though, it wasn't Russell Wilson's best performance of the year, certainly, but this team is now 5-0. They look like a bona fide Super Bowl contender. They won a tough game. And I think that this Seahawks team, I think they're legit. I think that they're for real.
Yeah, they are. This is more of a loss for the Vikings. When you talk about them offensively, Ryan, they were running twice as many plays as the Seahawks were. They had twice as much time of possession. And then the whole analytics numbers nonsense when it was 4th and 1, and then Chris Collinsworth sitting there trying to justify them going for it instead of kicking the field goal to make it an 8-point game. Brian, I think if they go and make it an 8-point game, I think they come out of there with a win. Like, I'm sorry, you take the points there, and you say, well, the numbers say that this gives you this kind of chance to, like, get out of here, man. Like, I'm all for analytics and stuff, but you just kick the field goal, take the points, then it's an 8-point game. Then you're forcing them. And it's like, oh, well, we're going to force them to go 94 yards down the field if we do this or whatever it was. Like, just take the points. I don't know why people are straying away from just taking points. The whole point of football, and the whole point of any sport, Ryan, is to score points. So when you have the opportunity to kick a short field goal and take 3 points, make it an 8-point game, force them to score a touchdown, go all the way down the field, and get a 2-point conversion, I don't know why you wouldn't do that.
So, because the math where are your numbers? That there's
pull the numbers, pull the math. Where's the math? This is what I work in math. So pull this math that justifies going for it on 4th and 1 instead of taking, here's some math for you to make it an 8-point game as opposed to what it was, a 5-point game. Because then what that allows them to do is go all the way down the field, not give you an opportunity to get back on the field when they inevitably score because they have the MVP. You're giving the ball to the MVP with a chance to win the game as opposed to tie the game. So what math justifies that?
The math shows that going for it on 4th down in that situation more often than not bodes better for the overall success of the team in that situation.
With the backup running back? With a backup running back.
He's not like a normal backup running back.
No, Ryan. you're going from who Dalvin Cook, who is the best running back in the league statistically up until that point, and he was playing really well in that game. And then you put in Madison, who missed the hole, Ryan, that would have sealed the game. He went the wrong way. If you go back and look at the tape, so he went the wrong way, didn't see the wide open stuff to the right hand side, and then you give the ball to the MVP of the league. And I will say it, Russell Wilson is the MVP of the league right now. And he went down the field and did exactly what he needed to do. That was just a dumb decision. Take the points.
It's just I can't fault the head coach for being aggressive in this day and age. I think it was the right thing to do. I think it was the right process. The results just didn't show. Right process, not correct results. I hope that they do it again if they find themselves in that position.
No. Bill would never do that.
Well,
At least in that situation.
Maybe Bill should open up a textbook and learn some math.
Bill's the best coach in NFL history. So I don't know. He's not like I know Mike Zimmer has a history of being aggressive, and I get that. And if the situation, right, if they were maybe 10 or 15 yards back the other way, like maybe more towards midfield, I would maybe justify that. But when you're that close and it's that sure of a field goal attempt, just take the points, and then you're forcing them to score a touchdown and get a 2-point conversion, as opposed to just having them score. Because then they can run down the whole clock. Because if they run down the whole clock and it's an 8-point game, Ryan, then the worst they could do is tie it. Then you're going to overtime. And then your offense is running twice as many plays as they are. You have more time of possession than they do. And they probably would have went down and had a chance to win the game there. And you have one of the better kickers in the NFL in Dan Bailey.
I don't know.
So
it's just half a yard, Matt. It's just hard for me to pass up that for just the coward 3 points. Just
the coward, Ryan. I took AP statistics in high school. There's ways to manipulate data to favor you in that situation.
It's just ways to say there's ways to spin
numbers.
It's 2020. Just be aggressive. Don't settle for the short field goal. If it worked, listen, they needed half a yard. If they got half a yard,
with your backup running back, we're talking about
how Seattle lost at home.
With your backup running back, who went the wrong way.
Alexander, he's a good running back. I'm not just saying that because I have a fantasy stock in him. He's a good running back.
There it is. That's why you're defending Alexander Madison.
No, I'm just it's coincidence. Listen. If they got the half a yard,
didn't really look too great in that game. But when you had that pick, right, when Russell Wilson threw that pick, and you're going down there, you're driving down, you have a chance to salt away the game. They were giving you that opportunity. Russell Wilson never makes mistakes like that. He throws that pick, and you have a chance to win the game. Just kick the field goal. Like I don't. And what was the thing we were criticizing Minnesota for at the beginning of the year, Ryan? Defense. What's their defense going to be like? So here, let me spin zone this back to you, Ryan. So we're doing a lot of spin zoning here right now. So we said the defense is bad, right? Nod your head. Yes, we said the defense was bad. You had those words come out of your mouth.
If we go back to the tape, I said that they were dealing with some injuries.
Yeah, all right. So they were going to struggle, right? And we also said, I think you also said a couple weeks ago that Russell Wilson is going to be an MVP candidate this season.
Yes.
Am I correct in that statement?
As long as they let Russ cook.
You're gonna risk putting your bad defense out there with a chance to lose the game outright, as opposed to just give up a tying touchdown to the MVP frontrunner of the league. And you're going to tell me that the math still justifies that, as opposed to taking the points, then setting your bad defense up with 80 yards to go, so a little bit more or a little bit less than what it would have been when they didn't get it on the 4th-and-1 conversion. And then a chance for them to run down the clock and tie it, and then go into overtime with your offense that has looked good in that game.
Your offense in any situation, if you're an NFL offense, should be able to get half a yard. Your defense in any situation should not let a team travel 94 yards down the field. So I'm going to keep banging my fist on the table. It was the right decision. It just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Both things went
Chris
wrong.
Collinsworth.
That was week 5 in the NFL.
We missed your Browns. We missed talking about how your Browns are.
Oh, I missed
good
because I went out of order. Correct. Yes. I don't know how I missed my Cleveland Browns, who I think are for real.
I'll keep it short. The Browns look good. Philip Rivers made a lot of interesting decisions. I think he kind of holds that team back a little bit, but that's my analysis from that game. I know you want to talk about how the Browns are the best team since sliced bread.
The Browns, this is their year. They are for real. I if I need to die on this hill, I'll do it. I listen, I think that the Colts are a solid team, but I think they're a team that needs a quarterback that they're not going to be able to get until next year. I was really sold on Philip Rivers in this offense going into the year. I just haven't seen enough. But let me tell you, I am all in on the Cleveland Browns. I think Stefanski was the perfect hire for this team. The offense looks really, really good. They look consistent. It doesn't matter that they don't have Nick Chubb. They have other guys that they can hand the ball off to and do anything they need to do. That just everyone on this offense looks in sync right now. Defense is a question mark. Defense is a little rough, work in progress, but they got some guys on that side of the ball. You take a look at this schedule. They beat Dallas when they had Dak, and they just beat a tough Colts team with a very good defense. They did lose very badly to the Ravens, but that was week 1. They were battling through some stuff. You take a look at their upcoming schedule, you see some winnable games. I'm saying it right now, Cleveland's going to make the playoffs. They're the second best team in this division. No way they don't make the playoffs. Just hammer that home. Hopefully I'm not wrong, but I won't be.
Is there any math that backs it up, Brian? Any math, any numbers that justifies that?
Theoretically, a 4-1 start, there probably is some math that that would say that they have a very good chance to make the playoffs. But yeah, they've scored 156 points this year. It's just their offense has been a lot of fun to watch. This is the first time in a while. It might be the first time in my life that I'm enjoying watching the Cleveland Browns as a football team. So I feel happy for that fan base. They have the 3rd most points scored this year, if you can believe that. Defense, as I said, defense is rough. Not saying they're a team without their own flaws. Defense is rough, but I think that they can fix that. As my camera battery, if you're watching the video version, has gone out, that's why you see a black screen. But hope you enjoyed my face for the first however many minutes of this podcast. That was week 5. That was definitely week 5 in the NFL. Now we got it. That was all the games we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Before we leave, before we part, let's talk a little bit about baseball. They are now in the ALCS and the NLCS. Game 1 of the ALCS was last night. A very tightly fought game. The Astros got a run in the first inning, and then they didn't score again for the rest of the game. I had told you that I didn't trust the Astros pitching depth in a 7-game series. We'll see if that still remains to be true, but the pitchers did very well for them. It was the offense, the bats, that couldn't get it done. Tampa Bay scored 2 runs, and it was enough. And game 2 is actually in about hour and a half from the time we're recording this. So, Matt, I picked the Rays in 5 games. As I said, I didn't trust the Astros pitching depth, and I just think that the Rays are a better team. What did you think going into the series?
Yeah, I had Tampa Bay in 6. Initially, I had the Astros in 6, but then I successfully walked myself back from that. I think the Rays just are a little deeper. And you mentioned the pitching, and I think that's going to come to fruition later on in this series. I think it also is a good luxury when you could go from Blake Snell to Charlie Morton to Tyler Glasnow, and then you could realistically be up at least 2-1 in a 7-game series, at least 2-1. Houston will steal a game or two, but I think most of America wants to see Tampa Bay win. So I'll stick with my pick for the Rays. And the fact that they were able to hold Houston to 1 run after what Houston was able to do to not only Oakland, but also Minnesota, I think it is a testament to what they have as a pitching staff.
Yeah, I think people need to accept the fact. This is a very unpopular opinion, Matt, but the Astros, if they had some pitching, if they had just a little more pitching, could probably make a run to the World Series. Sure, and hey, maybe they can still do it. I don't know. It's only been
So if
1
they
game.
had Justin Verlander, basically.
I'd say that. I'd say if Greinke was fully healthy, maybe that makes some type of a difference. I don't know, but they're not cheating this year, right? So listen, as far as I know, I don't know. I'm not there. But as far as I know, they're not cheating this year. And yet they've still managed to be able to make the ALCS. As you brought up the great offensive performances they've put up so far in the postseason. I get what they did in the past was not good. I understand. I think they should have been punished more than they were. I don't agree with what ended up happening with that situation. But at the same time, as a non-biased onlooker, I think it's impressive that with everything going on, they're still proving that they have a lot of talent on that team and a lot of talent that can show itself, especially in the postseason. It
Yeah,
wasn't, they didn't,
it's an
the
unpopular
cheating,
take, Ryan,
the
but
cheating played a role. I get that, but they still had talent on that team, and I think it showed this year.
yeah, no, I agree. It's something that I don't want to agree on, just because I think a lot of America and a lot of baseball fans don't want the Astros to be in a position like this. But I mean, it's a very real possibility that they could still win a series like this and make it back to the World Series. Which wouldn't that be something for how this year has gone, just in terms of everything in this country? To see a team like Houston go right back to the World Series, but I think Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay. In past years, they haven't been able to get past the division series, and they've had kind of talented cores like this, but they really are balling on a budget, and I think that they're just a better team. And I know I picked against them, Ryan. I'll eat my words. I said the Yankees were going to be the AL World Series candidate, but you were right about this one with Tampa Bay, and I'll ride with them. I guess it's if they had Verlander, it'd be a bit of an interesting series, but I don't know. It's they're going to make it longer than it needs to be, though. I will say that.
Meanwhile, on the other side, so you said you were wrong about the Rays. I'll admit I was dead wrong about the Atlanta Braves. I was not confident in them before the season, during the season, before the postseason, but they keep proving me wrong, and they've made it to the NLCS for the first time in a very long time. Although their prize for that is going up against one of the best teams I've seen in a long time, and that's the Dodgers. I picked the Dodgers in six. The Braves have impressed me. Their pitching staff has impressed me. I think they have the pieces on offense to make this series competitive, but I still think the Dodgers are just too good. I think they just have too much talent. I know people are going to talk about how they choke every year. We just have to wait to see it. Listen, whether that's the case or not, I still think that the Dodgers get to the World Series.
I don't think with the amount of talent that they've amassed on this roster, I don't think it's possible for them to choke anything away. I mean, I think we're looking at a similar situation to what the Lakers just did in the NBA, right? I mean, I don't think there's going to be much of a pushback from a lot of these teams. Initially, I had Atlanta, or I had LA in like 4 or 5, but I upgraded it to 6 to give the Braves some benefit of the doubt. But just looking at the way they kind of just dispatched the Padres, Ryan, a team that was the second best team in the National League. I don't really, and even when they get to the World Series, I don't see either Tampa Bay or Houston putting up much of a fight. I think it's going to be very difficult for the Dodgers to blow this one away. And you talk about them choking in the past. Mind you, one of those years was against a team that was cheating. So I don't know. I find it very hard to believe that they will not win the World Series rather handily, but we'll see. First time playing in front of fans all year, so that'll be, I
Yes.
guess, a real indicator too. So,
Matt, what pops your tarts this week?
what pops my tarts is people who don't get the flu shot. There you go. That's what pops my tarts. Takes 2 seconds. Um, Go in and out. What also pops my tarts is rainy, cold days that make you feel tired and don't feel like doing anything all day. Really counterproductive when you want to do stuff. So those are two things that pop my tarts.
All right. What pops my tarts is people that don't do what the math tells them to do in
Oh,
football
here we
games.
go. That's,
I
Ryan.
would listen. I'm going to actually bring this back to a personal level because we're up against the clock, but there was something I brought up and we forgot to talk about it. the 4th and 5 in the Steelers' territory when instead of going for it, Doug Peterson decided to send out Jake Elliott for the 57-yard field goal, which, by the way, no one in the history of Heinz Field has ever made a 57-yard field goal. I think the longest field goal in that stadium's history is 53 yards.
Yeah,
So
because that field's like dirt. I mean,
literally, it's that field goal has never been done. Nobody's ever been able to do that. Your offense was moving. If you converted it, you would have held the ball for the rest of the game and given him a more manageable field goal as he continues to drive down the field. But instead, they went for that. I didn't agree with it at the time. Even if they made it, I wouldn't have agreed with it because you still give Ben, with timeouts, 3 minutes to get back into field goal range and win the game. So if I was Doug there, he's been more aggressive the past couple of weeks, but I really think that was a chance where you need to look at the math and say, okay, going forward gives us a higher probability shot of winning. We need to go for it here.
I want to preface the math by saying I agree with that. I mean, especially what I've experienced over the past 2 years with kicking as a Patriots fan. If you have the opportunity to go for it on 4th down and make it a more manageable field goal, I'm all for that. But when it's 4th down and 1, the Vikings game last night was a much different scope of math than this. But I would agree with you 100%. Doug should have went for it. As you mentioned it, Heinz Field just it's not possible there. So I get Elliott's done it in the past, but I agree with that math. I want to be on the record that I agree with that math, but you can't universally apply math to those 4th down situations. That's what I was trying to make out of that point.
So that was Best Available Podcast, episode 10. As we talked about in the beginning, our guest he's coming. He is on the way. We don't know when, but it's going to happen. It might be this week. It might be November. It might be 2021, but he's on the way. So just stay tuned for that. Got a lot of exciting things to talk to him about. So just stay tuned. Got a lot of fun stuff coming over on the website. Matt will be writing a bigly, mega, huge college basketball preview. So if you needed to know anything about this college basketball season, which you probably do because it's probably going to sneak up on you with everything else going on next month, that will be your place to be, bestavailableplayer.com. So definitely go check that out. It's coming soon. So just like the guest is coming soon, this college basketball preview.
Yeah. What's gonna come first? My Atlantic Sun preview or the guest? Because everyone needs to talk about the Atlantic Sun at 2:00 in the morning on a Thursday, Ryan. I mean that's.
I'm gonna go with the guest. I'm gonna go against what I probably should. I'm gonna trust that he gives us a day. Probably not the best idea, but I'm gonna go with the guest.
Early pick in Atlantic Sun, by the way. Go with Stetson. Stetson looks pretty solid this year. So there's a little sneak preview of that.
Do they?
They look pretty decent. Are you fact checking me right now? No. There's a couple good teams. NJIT bounced. They're in the America East now. So there's the Florida Gulf Coast. Haven't really dug too deep in. I got my college basketball preview magazine, so I get that whenever I do these kind of things. Combine that with some internet stuff, so it'll be there eventually.
I think the Bellarmine Knights are going to be a good team.
All right. What?
I looked up Atlantic Sun, and that was the first thing that came up, is that they're going to join the Atlantic Sun in 2020-2021 season. So that's, yeah.
Okay. Who? Oh, Bellarmine. I've never heard of this until now. So glad there's a lot of good teams in the Atlantic Sun though. So I'm sure all of our listeners really want to hear about like Liberty. Liberty had a really good year last year though. Bellarmine. I'm going to have to do some research on this school. So that was best available player.
How about Lipscomb? Should I trust Lipscomb this year?
They were good a couple of years ago. You know what? I'll let you know after I go deep into this preview. But Stetson, I think, could be decent. I think there's a lot of teams that could be decent. So we'll see.
All right. Well, I can't wait to watch the Atlantic Sun Basketball Conference this winter. That was best
And we're going to
available.
talk about other conferences too. Don't think it's
Yes.
like, just the Atlantic Sun.
Yeah, from the high majors to the low majors, everything in between. Matt will have you covered. So be on the lookout for that. We'll talk about it more as we get closer. That was Best Available Podcast, episode 10. Thank you for listening. I'll see you guys again soon.